Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for those of you who are watching this episode of Let's Humanize the Workplace. My name is Vivian Acquah, and I'm the workplace wellness advocate. And I was just talking about with my next guest speaker that in the beginning, when COVID-19, started to affect me personally in the Netherlands. So I'm based in the Netherlands. I was thinking about, shall I continue with this session, with this episode, because everybody's staying at home at the moment, working from home at the moment. Is it necessary to have a discussion about let's humanize the workplace? But I got so many feedback from a lot of guest speakers, but also people that I was in touch with, that it's more than ever necessary to have these conversations. And to be honest, these interviews, these conversations, the sideline conversations that I'm having with future guest speakers, but also current guest speakers, it's connecting me with the world, because I'm missing that connection. Again, I can call all my friends, I can go all through all the places, but in a way, I need to have these conversations about humanizing the workplace, because just because everybody's staying at home doesn't mean that the yuckiness that was happening before COVID-19 was happening is all of a sudden gone, right? It's not so that, gender equality, diversity, effective communication is just like poof and it's been fixed, right? So that's why I decided to just continue to do these conversations and to inspire you along the way. So if you feel like this episode is inspiring you, or if you feel like any of the episodes is inspiring you, just share the love with whomever. You can tag the people, you can share it with people, and know that I also have a YouTube page where you can see past episodes. So this is the link, bit.ly-VLVYT, and I'll share the link later on, but just so you know that the link is there, that you can watch the previous episode. So sharing is caring, and share the love. I noticed this post regarding people maybe wanting to stay working from home after this pandemic. And I've been hearing this a lot. So in the Netherlands, it's also known that we are not a country that, well, we used to not promote working from home, and working from home was exceptional in a few businesses, and now we all learn that we can work from home. We can do it all. We can be flexible, and a lot of people are seeing the advantages. Not that it's not challenging, because a lot of people are also realizing that working from home can increase the loneliness. It can increase the challenging moments when you're working from home with your kids, or when you're a caregiver, right? So I'm not saying that it's not unchallenged, but people are definitely seeing the benefits out of it. And I'm curious to hear, are you going to work from home more often? Are you going to utilize the flexibility? Or are you going to encourage working from home? And especially those who are managers, or those who are in charge, the decision makers, how are you going to adapt this after this pandemic is over? Are you going to encourage your team members to work from home more often? Are you going to work from home more often? Just share that with me, because I'm really curious about this. And also, I know that I share this chart a lot, but this is a chart what was shared beginning of February. That was before COVID did, a lot of things now in the workplace forced us to work from home right now. But this was the chart already that people who are working from home were already challenged with the communication, the loneliness, collaborating, not being able to unplug, and distractions from home, but also being in a different time zone. And I want you to look at the top 5. Look at the top 5 and see what you can do to make it better for your people, but also see what you can do to make it better for your colleagues. And I'm so glad that I will be talking to Lisa. She is going to share so many tips and so many added, things that how to effectively communicate with your team members, or with your manager, or with your people. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring her up. and I'm going to introduce her correctly. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your last name right, so I'm doing my best. And otherwise, help me. Just say it. Yes, help me.
It's pronounced Giruzzi.
Giruzzi. Okay,
yeah,
then
perfect.
Yes. Lisa Giruzzi is a best-selling author, a transformative coach, and an award-winning trainer with 25 years of experience. She specializes in causing breakthrough results with her clients by giving them access to the whole new level of power and performance. And today we'll be talking about effective communication during lockdown. Thank you, Lisa, for being here. Where are you at the moment?
I live in Albany, New York, which is about 2.5, 3 hours north of New York City.
And how many weeks are you staying from home at the moment?
Or
working from home at the moment? I mean...
Well, I've been working from home for 16, 17 years. I own my own consulting and coaching firm. So I've been doing work remotely for years. So, but it's been different. I used to go to my clients' workplaces, and I used to see clients in my office, and I don't do any of that anymore.
I've been working from home. Sorry, it's my mistake. No, it's my mistake. Sorry. Yes.
No worries. So it's I don't know exactly when it started. I want to say mid-March, but my husband started working from home shortly after that, and then that was a whole nother ball game. So we share one office. So that has been wonderful and enlightening, let's say.
Yes, definitely. So I am working from home in Amsterdam. My home is Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And I think this week is week 9 for me. I mean, I lost count because every day seems like it's the same, right? And I only know the dates because I'm doing these live sessions. Otherwise, I would definitely lose track of the dates. And I only know the weekend. So the weekdays for me are, it's not that it's a copy paste, but I lost track of which day it is. And it is that because I'm doing these interviews that I need to, look at my calendar and see, okay, which day is it? Who am I speaking? And what are we doing today to prepare myself? So when it comes to the first question, what is your connection with humanizing the workplace?
Well, it's sort of twofold. I mean, today we're going to be talking mostly about communication, which is an aspect of the work that I do. And it was interesting that the graphic that you put up, the number one thing that was difficult was communicating and collaborating, which I'm not surprised. No. And frankly, people working from home has maybe shined the light on it or shown the light on it. But this has been an ongoing
But is communication not also the same for people who work in the office, that communication might be one of the top 5 things that we need to work on, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so for me, the thing about humanizing the workplace, or how that makes sense to me, is it's about connecting, right? So it's not about this, what I call transactional communications, which are do this, don't do that, do that, clean up in aisle 7 kind of conversations, which are necessary. I'm not saying that those don't need to happen, but when we have an overabundance of that, when and this is what I find in the workplaces that I've worked in, when I was an employee and also as a coach and a consultant, is that when human beings are talked at in that way, for both people, there's a disconnection.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the things we've learned from neuroscience, and I say we like I had something to do with it, but I mean, in neuroscience, I had nothing to do with it. But one of the things we have that has come forward is that that connecting is a biological need.
Yeah,
it's just not a nice to have. It's a must have.
Well, we know that now. We know that, during this lockdown, one of the things that I'm craving is staying connected with my family, but also staying connected with the people that my friends and coworkers that I'm working with, to at least know that they are okay, but also that I am okay and that they are checking up on me as well.
Yeah. And to me, that's what humanizing is. It's taking someone from an object that I'm giving qualities to and we objectify ourselves, we objectify others all the time.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite of humanizing. So,
Yeah.
I see communication on a spectrum of this transactional way of talking that I just talked about, where it's like, do this, don't do that, to the other end of the spectrum, which is more of a transformational, where there's seeing a new point of view, connecting on a different level, really exploring something together. And again, I'm not saying that you always have to be on that end of the spectrum or the other, but to at least know that there is this spectrum allows you to communicate appropriate to the situation versus having only one way of communicating, which a lot of people do. It's like, well, this is the way I communicate. And it's like, well, you don't have to do it that way. There's a whole bunch of ways that you're communicating. Then second thing that for me, why my work is about humanizing the workplace is that when we start to see people as human and we start to have an understanding of what gives human beings our experience, then we connect on a whole nother level. Like I have compassion for even someone who's doing something the opposite of how I think I would do it. Right. True. So when you sort of have the background understanding of why all of us are doing what we're doing, is then you start to have a different level of compassion. And to me, compassion and connection is exactly what humanizing the workplace is all about.
Aren't those ingredients a must-have when you want people to maybe go the extra mile? Because what you were sharing in the beginning, that directive way of leading people as going to aisle 5 or clean up this or do that, it's making people cringe. I mean, every time that I'm hearing that, it makes me cringe, and it makes me think like, why are you treating your people like dogs? I wouldn't even treat people like that anyway.
Yeah. And again, it's really just a habitual pattern. It's not, in most cases, it's really unintentional. It's more of a survival technique. Yeah. One of the things a lot of people don't know is that we have this, people know about something called fight or flight, which is
definitely now.
Yeah, well, and it's the amygdala. It's a part of the brain. It's one of the earliest parts of the brain that evolved. And when that takes over, blood and oxygen that would normally go to higher functioning parts of the brain stay in the amygdala, because all we need is a perceived threat. So if I'm a manager or supervisor or leader and I have a perceived threat that if this doesn't get done or if this is done wrong, something bad's going to happen. Yeah. Then I'm not using the higher parts of my brain. I'm using the fight or flight. And communication in fight or flight is very transactional. It's do this, do this, do this, which now you have the other person is now in fight or flight, and you have two people who are not using the best part of their brain, the creative part of their brain, to solve or deal with a challenge. So,
but sorry to interrupt, but that brings me also to the next question. And I think you were heading there. I hope that you were heading there. So what can managers do to bring out the best in their team members while working from home?
Well, I'm going to say you can use this while working from home, but it's also true in working when you're all together. And there's many things, which is, here's my shameless plug, why I wrote a book about this, bringing out the best in your employees. But anyway, true. Yeah. I digress. The first thing I would say is, and this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's from Stephen Covey, and he said that when we think of ourselves, we give ourselves the best intention. In other words, we judge ourselves on our intention. Like, I meant to do good. It might not have turned out, but I meant to do good. Yeah. But how we judge others is on their actions. And we completely disregard the intention. Yeah. And we typically put in an intention. If we do use an intention, it's got a negative slant. And because there's this conditioning for human beings that long before you and I got to this planet, there was this conditioning that, human beings are lazy. They're not going to, do the best. So they have to be managed and they have to be motivated, and there was all this sort of hierarchical, gotta force people. And if you look back, you know, because they were working for kings and idiots, you know what I mean, way back then. So they didn't want to, you know, what are they getting out of it, right? But that same mentality that same conditioning has sort of carried through. And so we live in a world where, even though lots of things have changed, that habitual pattern of thinking hasn't. So when managers and supervisors are speaking in ways that don't bring out the best in them, and I get curious and I ask them, well, what's your intention? What are you out to produce? What's the result you want? The intention is 99% of the time good. But there's the fear factor that keeps them from thinking, if I don't do this right, that person's not going to do it. So one of the first things I do is help people sort of slow down and retrain themselves to ask better questions. So don't assume that the person's intention was nefarious or, you know, negative, but actually get curious and wonder, like, you know, I know that this is how I took care of that situation. I'm wondering, you know, what was the thinking behind it? You know, what were you out to produce? What result were you looking for? Like, to just get curious about that, because then you can see where the misunderstanding is. I wanted to do X, but I ended up with Y result. Something wrong, but it wasn't because I was trying to do it wrong. It was really because, you know, my thinking wasn't, you know, in line or whatever it was. So when a manager or supervisor, instead of assuming, but actually slows down and gets curious about what the intention of their person is, I think that is a huge way to bring out the best. And then
I agree.
Can I say that the second thing I would focus on is, and this is directly related to communication, is if people would consider that they're not, when you're communicating with somebody, most of the time, how you're communicating is based on your story or your interpretation of that person, not on who they actually are. So I'll give you an example. So if let's say I have a boss and I think the boss is stubborn and closed-minded, right? And I have to go in and make a request of my boss. And if I go in to make a request of my boss and the boss does this, I'm automatically going to assume, because I have a belief that that person's stubborn, that this means they're stubborn. But if I have a different belief, let's say I have a belief that my boss is open and eager to hear my ideas, when they do this, I'm going to read it completely differently.
True.
Same action that the boss takes, but my interpretation and I would say my projection onto that person is now who I'm speaking with. So if I'm preparing to go talk to my boss, I'm preparing to go talk to a stubborn person. And that's gonna be like shooting myself in the foot, so to speak. You know? So instead, and we all do it, right? We know our husbands and significant others. We know who our children are. We know who our sisters and brothers. Like, we already know. Right? Like, we already know. And this is why it's so difficult during this pandemic, this quarantine in particular, is we're shut down with the closest people to us in most cases, and we're not dealing with who they are. We're dealing with the character that we think they are, and then you have a terrible time with communication when that happens. It's just it's awful. It's like, it's an illusion that person is that way. And trust me, I've worked with, I don't even know how many managers and supervisors at this point in my career who come to me and say, but you don't know, Joe is lazy, or Sally is stubborn, or whatever. And I go,
these biases are also not helping, right?
No. And the thing is you can't see anything different, because how our brain works is that we actually have something called a reticular activator that we look for what we tell it. Our mind looks for what we tell it to see. So if I say, okay, find everything red in the room, that's all my mind is going to see. So if I think Joe is lazy, then I can only see Joe be lazy, no matter what he does. But if I say sometimes Joe's lazy and sometimes he's motivated, then I have a better chance of seeing other activities. Or if I say, all right, I believe that Joe is lazy, but today I'm going to look for times when Joe isn't lazy.
Yeah.
Then that's what you're going to see. And I invite anybody who's watching this not to just believe what I'm saying. Don't trust what I'm saying. I'm asking you to go test it. Because if anybody has ever bought a car and you buy that car and then all of a sudden the first thing you notice is everybody owns the same car.
Yeah, true. No, true. No, true. That's
and it's like,
definitely
well,
true.
those cars were there before,
Yeah.
but you didn't see them. Why?
True. Yeah.
Now you're looking for them. So
I have a few. Oh, sorry. I have a few people who are sharing things. Is it okay to share them?
Yeah, of course.
So Jerry Mensa is sharing. What's the best way to communicate with people from different backgrounds? That's an interesting question. And Leanne Arthur is sharing. Compassion has been missing, but I do hope that COVID-19 will help managers understand the need for this in the workplace. And she's also sharing. Don't disregard intention of the employee. Great point. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I'll take it.
And also Jerry is sharing, what about some of us who are shy in regarding to communicating? So a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the first one, which is how do you speak to people from different backgrounds?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always, well, I don't know about always. Let me say, what I recommend mostly is to come with a mindset of curiosity.
Definitely.
So I teach a lot about listening, and going back to what I was saying about lazy Joe, or any whatever bias you have.
Yeah.
What happens is that we now have a filter that we're listening and we're looking at life through. So if I don't find that it works to just put another filter on and say, okay, he's not lazy, he's awesome, because then it's like fake. It's like positive thinking. But if instead you could come with a learner's mindset, and just be curious and wonder, like, I wonder what life is like for you in the Netherlands right now. I wonder what it's like to be locked down in your situation that's different than my situation. And there'll be things that'll be very similar because we're humans, right? And when you take away all the thinking that we add and all the stories and all the interpretations that we add to situations, it's just two human beings with two different conditionings, but not that far apart.
But why is it that when it comes to communication, we teach our children to express themselves, to share what it is that they are thinking, but eventually when we start working, we numb ourselves and we don't share what's bothering us in an effective way or in a mindful way without hurting each other.
Well, I think that's twofold. I think one is that creativity kind of gets squashed in us. As, I saw a study once that showed that if you ask kindergartners how many of them are good at like dancing and singing and all that stuff, 98% of them will say yes, they are at all of those things. If by the time they get to third grade, it's less than 50%. And by the time you get to middle school, it's like 10%. So it's, we start to believe things. We start to believe our own thinking. So I think that it's necessary for us to recognize our thinking and reality are not the same things. But they're just not. I mean, I can have a thought and get that that's just one way of looking at it. And when I can see my thinking for what it is, just a conditioned response, it's not the truth. Then I can start to have a little more freedom to express myself. But the other thing I think that you point to is what I was saying with the Stephen Covey quote, right? If let's say, someone treats me in a way that I feel is inappropriate, whatever, for whatever reason, I'm not talking, sexual or anything like that. I mean, like, I feel snubbed, or I feel like somebody said something inappropriate, right? And I don't mean, again, I mean like, made me feel slighted, like dumb.
I understand.
So I could either say, oh my God, that person hates me, or who the hell do they think they are, or whatever, right? Because I'm putting an intention in there. I'm projecting my own intention. But if I go to a person, rather than from a feeling of hurt or a feeling of you did this to me. But I go to that person with curiosity and say, I'm wondering, what was the meaning that you had behind that? Because this is how I heard. This is how I heard what you said. I'm wondering if that's what you meant. I'm wondering if that's because I'm guessing that many, many times that person is going to be mortified that they thought that, or that you thought that way, and then it can get resolved. But what typically happens is someone says something to me, I get upset. Now I start treating them differently. Now they go, well, who the hell is she? And they start treating me differently. And now it's layered and layered and layered and layered. And you have two objects trying to communicate.
But I do have to share something that happened to me personally. So I am, most of the time, I am the bigger person. I am the taller person. And also I've been through a lot of BS. And I try to see the good in people. So if in this occasion somebody is giving me a bad vibe, and I'm trying to ask them, I don't know what it is. We as Dutch people, the Dutch can be very direct. So sometimes I say it can be the way my language is, but it's not me. So I try to be very mindful, but sometimes it's not perceived like that. And then already, somebody puts some more salt on it while I am doing my best to save the occasion.
Yeah.
When is enough? Because you don't have to always be that person. I believe that you don't have to always be that person that has to be the bigger person all the time.
Yeah, and I'm not here to dictate how, people should or shouldn't live their lives. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But what I'm out to do is, in a lot of cases, it can be handled at that level. And then there's times that the other person is just stuck in their ways. And I've certainly met people like that many times where, I've had situations where someone said to me, well, get over it,
Yeah.
And, for me, I thought, okay, this isn't going to be a great relationship, but I can still be okay. I'm not going to let that person dictate who I am, right?
True.
So, again, you just have to choose where you want to put your energy. But if we're talking about the workplace and collaboration is key, I guess for me, and this may be very naive, even though I've been coaching for over 25 years, I do believe that everybody's doing the best they can given their thinking and given how the world looks to them. And sometimes the world must look pretty messed up the way they are acting. But I also know that they've mistaken their beliefs for truth.
Yeah.
And we've all done that. You know, I mean, we've all had situations where, we saw something and we would have bet our house, we would have bet our year's salary that we were right. And then we found out we weren't. Right. And then we're like, oh, my bad. Right. And I think that's true for all of us. We all can get caught up in our thinking. I'm just going to say this one other thing, and then we'll take more questions if you'd like. But, there was a time when our world was flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, people say that's not true. Of course, it's always been round, but not for the people who lived on it. The world was flat. Yeah. And it wasn't that they were dumb. It was just, that's how the world occurred. Everywhere they looked, it was flat, right? And then, with the advancement of science and everything, and it was discovered that no, it's round, right? That, a whole new world got opened up. Well, in that same way, for the people who were born during the flat earth time, they didn't even know that they didn't know.
Yeah.
It was just the earth's flat. It was not something we questioned. It was just the way it was. And now, there's a lot of things that people don't question, like a flat earth, right? They just don't question it because it's just the way it is. And, as horrible as this pandemic has been, the one thing that I think that has maybe a benefit of it is it's called us into question everything.
Yes, definitely.
Things we thought couldn't be done. Yeah. I mean, I have a client that runs a dance studio, and everything was pointing to them closing.
Yeah.
Except they said, no, Let's do virtual dance instruction.
Yeah.
So people who normally, elderly people who normally couldn't go and get dance instruction are getting dance instruction.
True.
So everything's being called into question. And I just invite people to embrace that, because that's where innovation and creativity comes from. Is not from knowing. Knowing doesn't get us anything, really. Knowing is a past-based phenomenon. But
it's also important that in this time and in this phase that we need to activate our growth mindset, because otherwise we'll be stuck, and eventually businesses are going to close down, and that's not what you want, right?
No, and if people could see that as the natural evolution, again, not wishing this happened, wish it could have happened a different way. But you know what? When it went from flat Earth to round Earth, a whole lot of professions got disrupted. When we went from landlines, what we call them here, telephones that had hardwired versus cell phones, a whole world got disrupted. Fax machines disrupted the world, but we don't think about that now. We think, well, that was, of course, this is so much better.
I think some people are even watching this don't know what a fax machine is. So just Google it. Just Google it.
Right, but my point is, I have a bookcase behind me. How many people don't even buy books anymore? So it's a natural evolution. I get it. Like there's a natural evolution, and this again, I can't say it enough. I don't want anyone to get the impression that I think this is, I obviously wish this didn't happen. It's been a horrendous situation. But every decade that I've been alive, there's been something like this that totally disrupts everything. And I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's something to the effect of, it's the adaptable businesses that survive. The ones that are adaptable and willing to question how they do business and what's another way we could do it. And that's what I invite managers and supervisors, going back to the question you asked me, is if you want to bring out the best in people, ask people, what do you think we should do?
Involve them. Definitely involve them, because sometimes I feel like companies don't realize that, it's not only the shareholders that own the company, but it's also their employees that own the company, right?
Absolutely. Because they own it, because they're exchanging life energy for dollars. And when you think about that, like if I'm working someplace and I'm choosing to work someplace for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day, I'm exchanging my life, the amount of life that I have, for some dollar amount. And when you really get clear about that, then you see how committed your people are. And you can get beyond whatever story you have about them and start to treat them like people who are invested in this business or this company or whatever it is, because they're investing something far greater than money. We only have we have a finite number of hours that we're on this planet, as far as we know. And if I'm dedicating those hours to a place, to an organization, then that's like the biggest commitment you can give. Yes,
I can totally relate to that. And regarding so I'm going to skip a few questions, but I'm going to head to this question. What do you think about the use of email, of just written text in communication, WhatsApp as a communication tool? So what can go wrong with that?
How much time do we have?
We have some time.
All right. Well, listen, every tool can be misused. If you have a hammer and you need to change a light bulb, you're going to be in trouble, right? So every tool can be. But a hammer to put a nail in is perfect. So, the challenges that I've seen with email, WhatsApp, texting, any of those kinds of things, is that they're built for speed. And most communication is really, we need time. And so knowing like what's a good thing to text and what's not a good thing to text, or what's what an email, like what, if you're doing an email to create context. I don't know if you've ever seen the, oh God, it just went right out of my head. There's 2 comedians. One of them is named Peel, and the other one I think is Keenan and Peel. But anyway, they do a very funny version of two people texting and they're
Mhm.
best friends, and it's, one is in a happy-go-lucky mood, he's watching TV, and the other one's like super stressed out, clearly had a
Mhm.
lot of caffeine. And it's just a demonstration of, if you search for it on YouTube, you'll see it.
Mhm.
I think it's Keenan and Peele, and it is hysterical, but it's every day in the workplace.
Mhm.
And when I do communication training, I use I use a couple of slides, and one of them is a wife texts her husband on a cold, snowy day, windows frozen. And the husband texts back, pour some lukewarm water on it.
Mhm.
And then 5 minutes later, the wife texts back, computer is really screwed up now.
Oh.
Right? So it's like, what do you mean? Right? Like, so it just to point out to people is like,
Yeah.
right, did they
Yeah.
hear what you meant, or
No.
did they just hear what you said?
True.
And
True.
and texting, and again, they have a place, WhatsApp, all of that. I use all of them.
Mhm.
But I don't coach clients through email.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
take any kind of.
I mean, things can get lost in translation, right? So the first week, I received an email from somebody who was working was working somewhere, and they received a message from the director saying that you can work from the office. You don't have to work from home. Stay at home because we don't have enough VPN to make it work for you to be able to work from home. And I'm just like, okay, but there are ways for you to ask that. There are ways for you to at least share that it is safe to work in the office, it is safe to work from home, and that if we are flexible with our VPN access, you can make it all work from home. You can make the work from home work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, again, the intention is missing, the context is missing.
Yeah.
So that person who sent the email probably thought about it for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was the thing that came out. Now the person who heard it is going to think about it for hours of how to respond, and and all this time that gets wasted.
Yeah.
Where people think an email or text is easier, but all that time has to be spent figuring out how to get both people's needs met.
True.
If instead they picked up the phone or call or did a Zoom call or whatever and said, hey, I've been thinking about this. I'm wondering if you could come in. And the other person gets to say, and it gets done in like a 10-minute conversation.
True.
But see, people think that texting and email and all that is quicker, but it's not when you think about it.
It's quicker to lose trust. It's quicker to gain more disengagement via that if you're not clear with your message and the way you message. So that person wasn't allowed to communicate anymore after that, because in the first week, the director was sending all of the panic emails, and it didn't come. It came negatively across.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the way, so the writing of the email takes 2 minutes or 5 minutes, but again, you add in all the time that you thought about it before, and all the time you have to spend now dealing with the miscommunication, and then you could have had one phone call and handled the whole thing. But that to me is also the issue with transactional conversations that I was talking about way at the beginning. That's what email and WhatsApp and texting is. It's all transactional, and it's a mistake to rely on it. In my humble opinion, it is a mistake to rely on that overly. It's not, I don't think those tools are meant for that.
No.
It's not. And so I really encourage people to come up with, ideas for, okay, when does texting work? When does WhatsApp or emails work? And where have you been effective? And what does it look like when it's been effective?
Yeah.
And then you could start to bring more thinking to it. And if I had one piece of, I don't know, advice or coaching for everyone, is to just slow down and bring some more thinking to whatever you're about to say or do.
Yeah.
Because if you can slow down, the amygdala gets disengaged, so you're not coming from fight or flight. You're taking a breath and you're saying, okay, what is it I want to? What is the result I'm committed to here? What do I want to accomplish really? And is this communication, is there a way to do that that's going to get, going to get me closer to that goal?
I also feel like managers and leaders in the C-suite level, this is a time to support each other, right? So if there is something there that you might think that it can come across differently, ask somebody else or ask somebody from the team if they can read whatever it is that you're sharing, so that at least you know if your message is getting across, and at least somebody who is able to share feedback, not somebody who is, say, is a yes person to everything that you're saying. So I have a few comments coming in. So Leanne Arthur is sharing live energy for dollars. She loves it. And Rishika Jones is also sharing, I love that. People are investing their life for dollars. So that quote is a money quote for you. And there's another quote, there's another comment coming in. Jackie Mardenborough, I hope that I'm pronouncing your name right, but she's sharing, how do you see communication developing in this technological age?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. I'm curious when you say communication developing. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, there's communication is an art, not a science, and there's not a formula that in my experience is like a one size fits all. And I think there's been a lot of attention misdirected in trying to figure out what to say before you get to the conversation, like trying to gather your thoughts and figure out what to say. And again, I think a lot of that comes from fear. And I'm not saying fear is right or wrong. I'm just saying that coming from a place of fear, communication is always going to be misinterpreted. You can't help it.
It seems like when you're communicating from fear or maybe from anger, it seems like you are the bull and you're standing in front of a red cloth that is hanging over you, like, okay, you have to attack something or you have to fight something, right?
Yeah. And I can honestly say I've never regretted a communication that came from love or kindness, but I've regretted a lot of communication that came from anger and fear. I mean, I probably everyone, but that's probably an overstatement, but I've never regretted coming from kindness and love and compassion ever. And I mean, I've had some really difficult situations with people, and when I brought love and kindness to it, their reaction was irrelevant.
Yeah, but you're making yourself vulnerable also in that situation.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think love and kindness is strength, in my opinion.
Maybe I'm not saying that right. So I see being vulnerable as a powerful way to connect with people. So that's what I'm trying to.
Yes, I agree. I'm sorry.
No. That's why it's important that we effectively communicate, right? We explain the situation.
Right. We just demonstrated that right there. High fives, you and me, high fives. Yeah, exactly. Because that's where we do connect. You're spot on. Vulnerability is where human connection takes place. And I had an instant reaction to vulnerable being weak. Yeah. But I see love and kindness as a strength. Yeah, and it's also being vulnerable. But if we can keep in mind, no matter what the technological advances are, that first and foremost we're human beings. Yeah. And that we are imperfect, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to have awesome times too. And God, I've been studying communication for a long time. I've been actively studying transformation and human performance for close to 30 years. And under stress, there are still times where my amygdala takes over and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And I go, wait, I wish I could.
And we are all human in that way. So I think it's not different for everybody. But to add on to what you're saying, I would like to challenge those who are in charge regarding communication, that instead of using emails all the time or using Zoom all the time, because it can bring on some exhaustion, especially our eyes are being they are going overtime at the moment, right? Zoom calls, all this reading that you have to do, but we also have our ears. And encourage you to bring out a message, maybe via a podcast or send in an audio message where you can hear the tone, you can hear whatever it is that that person is sharing. Is that person sharing it from love and vulnerability, or from love and strength, or is that person sharing something from anxiety? Whatever it is, you can hear a lot from the tone.
Yeah. And, I think it's okay to express what your intentions are.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
I highly recommend to managers when they're giving any kind of communication,
Yeah.
look, here's my intention with this,
Yeah.
with this email.
Yeah.
I want to keep you informed. This is a limited medium. I'm open to questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using email for efficiency's sake. But I also want to encourage you to have dialogue with me.
Yeah.
To me, that's just putting a sentence like that in there.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It is. It's like, why not create that context? Instead, we go, oh, well, they should know what I meant by that. Well, I don't, I don't know what I mean by stuff sometimes, it's just, we just forget. And
we are mind readers, right? Sometimes people think that other people are mind readers. We can't read your mind. We cannot see what's happening inside of here. So
I wish we could, but we don't. And if we had those bubbles above our head, like the cartoons, right? It would make it easier. But
definitely.
I think the other aspect here is to see that many of the things that through, I'm going to say necessity over the years for efficiency were really inefficient because they were designed thinking of human beings like machines, and we're not. And that experiment has got to be over. And that's why I love the Humanize the Workplace, because it was an experiment that I'd say failed. It got us to a certain level, but it did not get us, it did not necessarily bring out the best in us in human beings. So we need to, now I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater or, throw it all away, but we need to reevaluate from a place of humanness and place of what's true about human beings is that we operate our best when we're all in this together, when we believe we're part of something bigger than ourselves. That's proven. When we have that, awesome, right? When human beings see themselves as sort of part of something bigger than themselves, and they're able to do their best every day, you get the best out of people. And so
I totally agree.
So I look at businesses and I say, okay, let's intentionally design your culture and let's create structures that are designed to bring out the best in people versus structures that are designed for efficiency or designed for some other purpose. If you design it to bring out the best in people, efficiency will naturally happen. It just does. Okay, and profitability naturally happens.
I'm going to stop you and going to kindly ask you to repeat that. Just that last sentence again for people that were sitting in the back and couldn't hear you. Just like that.
Well, when businesses are designed, or organizations, any business, it doesn't have to be just business. It could be nonprofits, anything. When they have their primary focus on efficiency, they take the best out of what's human.
Yeah.
It's our creativity and our adaptability and our thinking, right? That's like we have these amazing computers in our heads. So when we design and intentionally design, not by default, but intentionally design our workplaces, organizations to bring out the best in human beings, to actually foster what's best about human beings, efficiency, productivity, and performance naturally increase. And by the way, you have to spend no money on motivation because human beings are naturally motivated. If you have any question about that, watch children play.
Yeah.
You don't have to motivate children to play.
No, true.
They're naturally motivated. And every one of us as human beings have that within us. It just got learned out of us, right? Yeah. And so when we recognize that human beings are at their best, when we're, I'm going to say, have that childlike quality, we bring our intelligence, yes, but we have that that excitement and that enthusiasm, you can create organizations that are designed for that. I've helped do that.
Yeah.
And I know of other organizations that have done that. And I know of other consultants who do that. So it's not a pipe dream. I'm telling you, this is the wave of the future. And people are either going to have to get on board or, because, oh, by the way, there is, not right now because of the pandemic, but there is a talent shortage, at least in the United States.
It was happening here, but now we have another thing happening.
Exactly.
Through COVID,
but that's going to get resolved. That's going to get resolved. I predict that will. It's not, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point that's going to happen again, where there's going to be a talent shortage, and you don't want people jumping ship for $1 more an hour.
True.
Or more money. You want them being there because they wouldn't trade their relationship with you and the relationship with the people and the who they get to be in their organization. They wouldn't trade that for dollars.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important that your company or the company that you work for shows what they are doing for their people now, shows how they are supporting their people. Because remember, we live in a digital age where you can Google a lot, you can research a lot, you can find a lot. And I also want to share a few comments that have been made. So Tammy Parrish is sharing, I find texting and apping often very inefficient. If it takes more than 2 exchanges, I'd rather pick up the phone. I totally agree.
Me too.
Leave voice messages. And Tammy and Leanne also agrees, more personal. And Tammy is sharing my thing. She's sharing, and Vivian also taught me the value of voice messages on LinkedIn. It makes it much more personal. I share voice messages because A, it's efficient. B, typing on the phone isn't that efficient, and my story doesn't come across the way I want it to.
I didn't even know you could do that. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't know you could do it until you did it, and I was like, damn, she's great.
It's my secret. It's my secret. No, definitely. I've been using voice messages as a way. You can hear that I love talking, right? And I can say more things than I can type. I am much faster speaking than I can type. So that's why I'm using that. And also Rashida,
I just wanted to say one thing. I just want to real quick. There was somebody who said something about being shy, and I just remembered. Is it okay if I just answer that?
Yes, definitely. So, what about some of us who are shy? I guess. Yeah.
So here's my question, and I would just ask you to just look for yourself. The person who asked this question is: are there times when you're not shy?
Yeah.
Because we tend to overgeneralize.
Yeah.
So I've worked with a lot of people who consider themselves introverts and shy. And then when we investigate it further, we see, oh, there are times when I feel shy and times when I don't.
Yeah.
And the only difference is my own thinking.
Yeah.
Shy is not in your DNA. Shy is not a permanent characteristic. It's a conclusion that we come to, and then we label ourselves.
Yeah.
So it would encourage people to whatever it is, like even overachiever or whatever we call ourselves, to just sort of notice that label and then get curious about it, and then wonder, like, oh, what if the only difference between me being shy in this situation versus that situation is my own thinking?
Yeah.
Then what can I do about that? And
it helps to practice with somebody. So we're slightly going a bit over time. Are you okay with time?
Fine.
Yeah. So
I obviously likes to talk too.
I am enjoying our conversation. So let me see, because it's a challenge sometimes to watch the comments on LinkedIn. So Rashida is saying vulnerability is a strength. Courage and vulnerability are one and the same. Thank you, lady. And she's also sharing, I started VM. It has saved me some RSI on my fingers. I am curious about what you mean with VM. So please help us and share what you mean with VM so that we know.
Voicemail? Voice message?
Yes. I'm thinking about virtual machine. Yes, voice messages. Indeed, it makes sense now. It makes sense. So we went totally off script, but I still enjoyed it. But there is one last question that I need to ask you before we stop this. And I think that we have to do this in a few months' time to ask the other questions, because I do feel like you need to, come back and do the other questions as well.
Anytime. I would love to.
What is your wish for 2025 when it comes to humanizing the workplace and bringing out the best out of employees' experience?
Oh my God, that's such a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would go back to what I said, which is I believe that I would like to see organizations intentionally designed to bring out the best in employees. In other words, to recognize what is awesome about human beings.
Yeah.
And then to design the organization and create structures, because structure drives behavior. So if you can create structures that are designed to bring out the best in human beings, to collaborate, to be connected, to be a learning organization, to wonder together, to create, to have all that. That's all the best of what human beings are.
And you can definitely see, positive examples of the companies that have that in place are surviving at the moment, who are doing their best at the moment because they have that in place. Yeah.
I would say that they're thriving.
Yes.
Because, as I've heard said, and I don't know who said it, but that the true test of character isn't formed in a crisis, it is revealed.
Yes.
In a crisis. So these organizations that are failing, it's, again, difficult circumstances, but it is revealing what they were designed for.
Yeah.
And so, so as far as my wish for 2025, I think if we were willing to question everything about what we think about human beings and actually see what's true, because not the way things are designed have not caught up with the findings in neuroscience and in what I often talk about of the principles behind the psychology of human beings. Like when you know those principles, it makes everything so easy because you're going with the flow versus trying to swim upstream. So that would be my wish, is that human beings are willing to just see how life works and then live consistent with how life works.
You were sharing something about those principles. Do we need to learn more about those principles at work, or does it start from school, or does it start at home?
Well, that would be a great next show. But I would say
cliffhanger.
Well, not only it's not that, but it's really a very powerful conversation to have, and not one to have in a couple minutes. But what I would say is, just like, imagine when the world went from being flat to round, it went because people started to live differently. And then when people started to live differently, it wasn't just at work or at school or at home. It was, they just were living differently. And then things started to change. And that's, so the more people that understand how the human experience actually works and live consistent with that, instead of living the way we do now, which is the opposite of how human beings work, then it'll pervade all those things. But I would love to come back if you would have me to talk about that.
I already invited you, you have to come back. There is no if. And looking at the audience, a lot of people are enjoying it as well. So thank you for sharing your wonderful insights. And also, I feel like I have so many questions to ask you, but I really love what you shared and the way that you allowed me to free flow during this conversation. So thank you for being here, and you are definitely coming back to this.
Well, good. Well, to me, what you and I demonstrated is we both thought ahead of time about what would be great to talk about.
Yeah.
But we didn't get stuck with that. We actually trusted our in the moment intelligence and creativity to create value. And definitely. I think we totally modeled what we were talking about, which is everything is possible when you realize that you have an in the moment creativity and intelligence. It doesn't have to be, fully scripted and planned. You can trust that.
I trust you.
trust me too.
Thank you. So I'm going to close off. So please stay on. Please stay. I'm going to close, and then I'll be back to you soon.
Okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. It was a joy, and thank you to everyone who listened.
Thank you, too.
And questioned. Yeah.
So I'm going to close off. So for tomorrow, this week I'll be doing 3 episodes. So tomorrow I'll be talking about mental health during and post-corona lockdown. I'll be having the conversation with these 3 lovely ladies, with Farah and Erica and Tanya. And there's a lot to talk about regarding this, so stay tuned. On Thursday, I have a Dutch Humanize the Workplace, and it will be about AI recruiting and inclusive diversity. So if you're Dutch and you are curious about this topic, stay tuned, and otherwise till next week. And my name is Vivian Acquah, the Workplace Wellness Advocate, and thank you for watching. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay, and until next time, bye.